Hey gang, it's KR King of D&D Homebrew talking today about how the dice are your friend in an RPG game in which you roll dice for things. And this came up on my podcast, Monsters and Treasure with Daniel Norton of Bandit's Keep. Be a link down below in the description. We were talking about in the old days when the rules, especially the white box set, when there were things that weren't systemized, that were missing from the rules as it were. And all the GMs had created these stacks of homebrewed rules, and we had character classes and, just all sorts of stuff. So when you would play in someone's world, they had these homebrewed systems, and sometimes some people were known to have deadly homebrewed world, homebrewed systems. Some people were known to be much more lots of treasure and stuff like that. And you got it also from magazines like Dragon Magazine, or I think there was White Dwarf, as I remember, and then there were fanzines that people would put out, or somebody would have come up with something in their game, and you'd say, man, that weather system you have is great. Sure, here it is. I got it. Make a copy of it. And this is the way we supplemented things. Even first edition, there were things we didn't like. We had made all these things before that came out, and so we still continued to use a lot of these charts and systems. And the homebrewed ethos, we didn't think of these books as somehow canonical, or, the rules as written didn't have the same feel for us. And the reason that we always came up with these charts and subsystems that were based on probabilities is we tended to roll dice to see what happened. We didn't necessarily rely on just negotiating with the players and the referee, as we called it, who ran the NPCs, right? There was an element where we took it out of everyone's hands and put it in this probabilistic situation where you as the players would do your best to affect that, right? You'd have ways of modifying what the final roll was going to look like. And then the GM would roll also for some modifications that might occur. You rolled to hit things and you missed or hit depending on different factors that lowered or raised your probability. And the referee rolled for the monsters the same way. You rolled for a saving throw based on, the probability based on your character class, and if you had, magic buffs or whatever it was. So we always did this in terms of a lot of social situations, even, as you'll see, when we ran the game. And in the process of that discussion, I pulled out some old charts that I had, and I found this medieval justice chart. And I want to dive into this a little bit to show you this. I came up with this about 15 years old, 16 years old. I didn't type at the time. I think I had my sister type this out. It just was typed on a piece of paper. And let's go in and look at it. So here is my chart on the medieval judiciary system. And it's kind of an insight into my mind at 15 of what I thought about what the justice system was about. Because if you look right away at the possibilities of your sentencing, down here, you only have a 15% chance of either being acquitted or set free and given money. In every other situation, you're either going to go to jail or you're going to be hung or drawn and quartered, right? Immediately. And again, I have this escape recapture. If you drawn and quartered, you only have a 5% chance of escaping. I presume they just take you outside and you're going to do it. And then there's a 50% chance they just catch you. Not sure what I was thinking. Of course, that's the outcome roll. The setup, you have some modifiers that you can do. First of all, this weather roll, I have no idea what I was thinking. The weather during the trial? I don't know. But it does give you some bonuses here. And then your judge, okay, if you have a 50% chance of having a judge that doesn't like you and subtracting one, which then means, depending on the weather, of course, and the crime, you automatically if you started with this, that'd be a 10% chance of getting off. Obviously, the weather is a little better. You have a 50% chance of having some plus. And then the crime, again, an insight. I have jaywalking +2. Like, how often do you ever have characters picked up for jaywalking? But more likely to be picked up for vagrancy, I guess. And I had a -1, which means with poor weather and a bad judge, you could be drawn and quartered for jaywalking on a 1 through 6. That is 30%, my friends. That is rough justice. All right, so today, if you had a situation where the players have been arrested for some crime, you do it a lot differently. It's much more player-centric, right? Based on, depending on your system, their attributes or their skills. So if they're on trial, let's say for murder, and they have a trial, the players are going to, use, a charisma attribute or persuasion skill or deception or, diplomacy, whatever that is, or even history to explain, the situation, whatever the GM allows. And then you're going to have pluses and minuses that the players may have in terms of their knowledge about something or the influence that they have. And the players are going to roll to see, what's the outcome of the trial based on a DC that the GM sets, the difficulty of, you've killed the king in front of everyone and you're trying to justify this regicide. It's going to be a high DC, right? And that regicide is the worst. The punishment is, hung, drawn, and quartered type thing. As opposed to vagrancy or jaywalking, right? They just want a fine out of you. And you may realize that and just say, okay, I'll just pay the fine and you move on. And of course, if you're held in a jail cell, those skills come in, thievery, to see if you can pick a lock without tools, probably you're in jail. The bars on the cell, if a strength check to see if you can break those. What is the cell like? And that can be determined by the size of the city you're in. A small village isn't going to have much, just a little jail might be easy to break out of, as opposed to a dungeon in a keep, in a large city. But you can randomize that. And this is where it gets interesting. This is where the dice truly are your friend. Because as I mentioned, this judge that might be the hanging judge or might be really friendly, you just roll that randomly and you as the GM then have to come up with a story. Or the judge hates the bailiff, why? What happened there? And the judge is sympathetic even though the players are on trial for treason. Like they've killed the king in front of everyone. And, you as a GM might say, well, the judge is going to be opposed to you. One, because they represent the state. And two, they don't want to get in trouble themselves. So the chances that they're being a very unsympathetic judge. Okay, but I rolled it and I rolled a 00 sympathetic judge. Okay, now what are you going to do as a GM? You're just going to ignore that? I mean, people say, that's why I hate these random. I know what the judge, well, no, you got to deal with that. You got to say, okay, this guy, maybe he hates the state. Maybe he has a grudge. Come up with something. Let the dice be your friend from a narrative storytelling point of view. Because the two things you're doing here is the setup and the outcome. And using probabilities that you've determined. The setup being, okay, the crime has been occurred. I don't know, who are the witnesses? What is the level of this crime? That may not mean the players just did this, but what is it considered in this place? The judge, is there a jury of their peers? Is it just the king that can overturn the verdict and you just got to go to him? Then the outcome based on the players attempting to defend themselves using their skills, and then can they escape from the jail if they're sentenced to death at dawn? Kind of an extreme result, but can they figure out a way out of there? And what are the probabilities of that? And as I talked about when we talked about the judge, if he's yelling at the bailiff, you idiot, maybe the bailiff is sympathetic. The players see that. They see the seething, he hates this guy. So they just question him, even though they're taking back and forth to the jail. Yeah, that guy sentenced my brother. He hung my brother or something, right? Because you've just rolled this randomly. You've just said, oh, the judge is a hanging judge, but the bailiff is sympathetic. Again, all the rolls might go against the players, but I'll bet you there's something there. So the players see this and say to the bailiff, we're going to make this right. We're going to help you. Or it might be as simple as, look, I'm broke. I want to get out of here. And the players realize they could bribe him or bribe the guards. And you're rolling as to whether they can bribe the guards. And again, just saying that if I offer the guards 500 gold, which is a king's ransom to them, they're just going to let us go, right? Well, are they? They have to go somewhere. Probably, I'd say you have a really good chance with a 500 gold piece bribe, but there might be a chance they just turn you in. They tried to bribe me. We're going to add that to your, and seize your goods. Because again, you got to come up with the money somehow. It's not on your person. So they got to communicate, got to say to them, I'll get you 500, blah, blah, blah. That's how it's going to work. And you're rolling to see their reaction. And the other thing is, are you rolling to see whether they are idiots? Because if the players say, I'll get 500 gold, you're going to let us out. But these guards are fools. Now, again, they're guarding these prisoners, so maybe they aren't. Maybe you make it a low probability. And again, you don't have to just sit there at every single thing. Is the meal good? Does it make them sick? Let me roll for that. You're not doing that. But you're doing things to help you to stimulate your storytelling skills. Because this is why they have all these charts, like in the Dungeon Master's Guide and stuff, from the infamous floozy chart of the first edition on down, just to let you, roll on something and something randomly comes up, and then you create the story behind it, right? It's just to stimulate. There's tons of PDFs out there. You know, the NPC, what weird thing. The NPC has a limp. Well, why does he have a limp? Well, he was in some battle with some giant scorpion, and he's the only one that survived. They never did kill that giant scorpion. Well, okay. Where was that exactly, right? Or whatever. Just, you're creating a story. You're creating something from this role that maybe you just have a tremendous imagination and you're just thinking things up for every NPC. That's great. But I'm saying dice can be your friend because that probability takes that intent away to a certain extent up here. This is the die rolling land. Here's the players and the GM, such that we're reacting to those rolls. If the GM is just missing in a battle, that's just, they're just missing. Or the players, you have those bad days. And then you have the good days when you just keep rolling a 20 and whatnot. It's tremendous. Because the thing about negotiating everything for me is what I notice is GMs can be susceptible to certain lines of thought when you're negotiating as a player. Or I can be susceptible to making assumptions about things that are not necessarily the case. A small village, if I roll a 20 on how secure the jail is, well, why would a village have this incredible jail? That makes no sense. And you wouldn't probably do it if I'm just setting it up and we're sort of negotiating and talking about this. But I rolled a 20. It had a famous criminal was held there, and the state came and they built this jail for this village just for this case. And now it's still there. Okay, makes sense. I mean, it's again, I rolled a 20. So I'm letting the dice, that probability, because there's a chance that could have happened. But I never would have thought of that. If I just say, in this village, there's an incredibly secure jail. There's no way you can get it. And the players are like, what do you mean? Why is that? Well, because they had this famous criminal that was held there and everything. And they're going, but if I roll it, what are you going to do? Right? That's just the probability. Now, again, they might say, well, there should be no chance. That is a worthless chart because if you roll a 20 or you roll 100 on a percentile dice, well, again, that's a chance out of 100 or whatever that is. It could be. So, that becomes, and the chart that I showed you, I mean, that was a severe justice system. I would never use that today, where you've got a 15% chance, a base chance, and then there's all those modifiers, and you get down to no chance. You're going to jail. So I would say that chart's a little unfair. And why the weather is in there again, I don't know. I can't remember. So you do want to have these probabilities make sense. But just as the rolls, when the dice don't go your way some nights, you have problems. Just like teams lose games when the bounces didn't go their way. They were just off from the very first quarter of the game. And, oh, man, it was a slog. And maybe they still won because they were that much better of a team, or maybe that's why they lost. And those are just the way the ball bounces, right? The way the dice roll sometimes. And you as a GM and the players are adapting to that. And they're creating storylines and narratives based on, the gods of luck. Right? And that was why we systemized all these things with probabilities back in the day. We didn't just think, oh, well, there's no rules for trials and justice, so we'll just talk through it and just do that. No, our instinct was to make probabilities and to set up a system, and then the players would try to modify and whatever, and off we'd go, and we'd have that roll, and those rolls were super exciting. All those different charts we had. It was great fun. So think about that. If you're in a system that rolls dice, because there are some where you don't do any die rolling, but if you're in a system like that, think about ways that you can always have the dice be your friend as a GM, stimulate your imagination, set up that plane, that probability that kind of takes it to another realm, and you and the players are just having to deal with the cards you were dealt, the dice you were rolled. And I think you'll find that it adds an extra little dimension to your game. And a shout out to my Patreon supporters. This week, I did a puzzle PDF with a story behind the puzzle and a video describing kind of ideas on how you can make puzzles work in your world. I really enjoyed making this, and I really enjoy all of your support. And if you like what you've seen, please subscribe to my channel. Always looking for more. Leave your comments. Tell me what your thoughts are. I'd love to hear some opposed. You don't think that the tyranny of dice or something like that. I'll always listen. And most importantly, my friends, keep playing an RPG game, whichever one you choose, and tell somebody else about it.